This is the book of Revelation 6 and verse 3. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory unto the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash. Double honor to my teachers, the head apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who rule and teach well, who I learned this truth from. And peace and salutations to the elect that scattered across the four corners of the planet Earth, pushing His truth and sincerity and meekness without wavering, as well as risking life for freedom to do so. This is your brother ICR from GMS Cleveland Church, and I'm back with another lesson. And Lord willing, this is edifying to one of the Lord's elect. Okay, and we gonna get right into it, man. All right, more proof that the Heavenly Father's scriptures, His word, is faithful and true. Revelation 6 and 4. Horse represents power, and red indicates someone specific in the book, which we believe through the spirit and power of Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai, and know that the red horse represents Esau, Edom, which is the so-called white man. Remember, when you go to Genesis, the 25th chapter, it describes Esau as red, okay? And he was blessed by Isaac in the 27th chapter with the sword, okay? In America, all right, because this is speaking about Esau, and also America, since America came to, into existence, it has been at war, I believe 93 or 97% of the time it has been in existence, man. All right, so this is the, the great sword, okay? Because America goes around committing atrocities on other nations, man. And I have a video by Chris Hedges. He's a journalist. He interviews different people. He interviews people about certain topics. And yeah, we gonna get right into it, man. It says why the U.S. military is quote unquote Earth's greatest enemy. Right? Earth's greatest enemy, man, is the United States military, man. All right, this is the red horse. Okay, let's go. And I don't own any rights to this video for educational purposes and not monetary gain. All right.
Earth's Greatest Enemy, second feature film project by Abby Martin, documents how the Pentagon, the world's single largest institutional polluter, spews carbon, contaminates water, and spreads toxins across vast landscapes while being exempt from climate agreement. Earth's Greatest Enemy, second feature film project by Abby Martin, documents how the Pentagon, the world's single largest institutional polluter, spews carbon, contaminates water, and spreads toxins across vast landscapes while being exempt from climate agreement.
Right, he said Earth's greatest polluter. Right, let's grab another precept. All right, let's Esau's being exposed, man. This is Revelation 11, verse 18. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come at the time of the dead, that they shall be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints and them that fear thy name, small and great, It should have destroyed them that which destroy the earth, right? And who's destroying the earth? The United
Spews
States of
carbon,
America. Who runs
the
the
world's
United
single
States of
largest
America?
institutional
Esau, Edom.
polluter. Spews carbon,
all you
contaminates
Edomites
water, and spreads toxins
are destroying
across
the earth,
vast
but
landscapes
starting off
while
with the
being
United
exempt from
States of
climate
America,
agreements.
man. Like he said, they are exempt from. Just play it back. Just play it back. You see, they're destroying the earth, man.
Spews carbon, the world's single largest institutional polluter. Spews carbon, contaminates water, and spreads toxins across vast landscapes while being exempt from climate agreements.
Exempt from climate agreements, because this is the ancient Roman Empire. United States is the headquarters.
The film focuses on an often
Islam,
unexamined
okay?
aspect of the war
They
industry,
make
which
the
not only
laws,
eliminates
but
human
they do
lives
not
through
abide
violence,
by the
but also
laws.
through
They're above
ecological
the law.
devastation. The U.S.
See,
military
let's
is the
keep
single
playing.
largest
I mean,
consumer of
you know,
fossil
there's
fuels
a lot
on the
of
planet at
precepts
270,000
in the
barrels of
line
oil a day. This amounts to
I'm not
55
gonna,
million
keep
metric
pausing
tons of
and stopping.
CO2
Let me just let it
annually,
play.
more than
The
150
film
countries.
focuses
The United States is the only country which has some
which not only
1,000
eliminates human
installations
lives
and
through
bases
violence,
dotted
but
throughout
also
the
through
globe.
ecological
Russia has 9,
devastation.
China has
The U.S.
1.
military is the single largest consumer of fossil fuels on the planet at 270,000 barrels of oil a day. This amounts to 55 million metric tons of CO2 annually, more than 150 countries. The United States is the only country which has some 1,000 installations and bases dotted throughout the globe. Russia has 9, China has 1. Hey, another precept, right? Went into those military bases. This is the book. I believe it's Psalms 37 chapter, right? The book of Psalms, chapter 37. And yep, 37 and 35. This is the book of Psalms 37 and 35. I have seen the wicked in great power. Right? The wicked is who? Esau, Edom. He's in great power and spreading himself like a green bay tree, right? He just explained to you how all those military bases compared all across the world compared to Russia and China, man. But let's keep playing, man. This is 1 minute in.
These military outposts are equipped with thousands of vehicles and aircraft. The U.S. Air Force alone is larger than the next 5 biggest air powers combined. It would take the average American driver over 40 years to burn as much fuel as a single flight of a Boeing Pegasus. The U.S. flies more than 600 of these tankers, triple the rest of the world combined. The direct emissions from warships, vehicles, warplanes, tanks, and military bases do not include the indirect emissions emitted by weapons manufacturers, suppliers for the military, and the machinery that extracts raw materials in countries such as the Congo that are vital to the military machine. If these indirect emissions are factored into the carbon footprint, the Pentagon CO2 output is at least 3 times higher, over 165 million metric tons a year. Joining me to discuss her film, Earth's Greatest Enemy, is Abby Martin. So what is it that propelled it? It's a great film, and we've got to make sure we tell viewers how to link to it. But what is it that propelled you to kind of look at the military from this angle?
I think for a lot of us who have been witnessing the ecocidal nature of U.S. imperialism and the destruction that it brings around the world, it's been so obvious for so long that when you destroy landscapes, when you mass murder people, those toxins, the carcinogens that are unleashed from the constant bombing, the pulverization of concrete, this carbon-dense material that we've seen in Gaza, it's so obvious, Chris. I've always been an environmentalist, and so as an anti-imperialist journalist, it's always just been such an obvious link. And I was always so curious why no one had synthesized this material. And not just the emissions, but the totality of this gargantuan subject, because it's not just emissions, it's really everything. Every base is a story of not only legacy contamination, but ongoing contamination with the waves of militarization that we see today. So I was really upset that this wasn't a mainstream issue, that this wasn't incorporated in the narratives with mainstream environmentalism. And instead you saw people like Elizabeth Warren talking about draining a global military empire, which we know is completely unsustainable and uninhabitable, with the viability of a planet that sustains human life.
With the waves of militarization.
Well, and they don't just poison those abroad. I remember the bombing in Bosnia when I covered the war, and those craters, nothing ever grew because there was uranium. Those were uranium-depleted munitions. I drove on my way to Basra, where I was eventually captured by the Iraqi Republican Guard, up the highway of death. Well, and they don't just poison those abroad. I drove on my way to Basra, where I was eventually captured by the Iraqi Republican Guard. I covered the war, and in those craters, nothing ever grew because there was uranium. Those were uranium-depleted munitions. I drove on my way to Basra, where I was eventually captured by the Iraqi Republican Guard, up the highway of death.
He said Basra? Let's rewind that.
I drove on my way to Basra, where I was eventually captured by the Iraqi Republican Guard.
Basra, man, hey, man. Basra is the chief capital of Edom. But I don't think he's talking about, that is, the place that's mentioned in the scriptures. But nevertheless, Basra was mentioned, you see. And the Lord is going to visit Basra, according to what is that, Isaiah 63, right? Who is this that coming from Edom with dyed garments from Basra, right? Which is talking about what? Is he actually going to visit Basra, Edom? No, because Esau is not even there. Okay, Esau is a people. No, when it talks about people or places, it's talking about a people before a place, man. And we know that Esau dwells mainly here in the United States of America. And a runner-up after that is Europe and Russia. Okay, then you also have other places as well. But America first and foremost, because this place is going to be destroyed by thermonuclear missiles, man. Then all those Edomites in the Eastern Hemisphere, they're going to go into captivity, man. See? Because they're all the same, man. They're all the fucking same, man. There is no such thing as a good Edomite, man.
Up the highway of death, it was coated in white dust from Iranian-depleted munitions that, of course, sickened and killed many of the service members who had to go clean it up. But you also talk about Camp Lejeune, that these poisons are in that sense, the military is non-discriminatory. They're quite happy to poison their own as well. We didn't even talk about the trash dumps.
Up the highway of death, it was exactly. I mean, you look at something as cynically exploited as the 9/11 first responders. I mean, these were lauded as the heroes of 9/11, slapped over all the propaganda to activate that reptile brain after 9/11. And what was done to them? Basically left to die. I mean, denied health care every step of the way. These are the 9/11 first responders that were digging through the asbestos-laden toxic dust. So, of course, the service members are completely expendable in the eyes of the ruling class and the military brass. I mean, every base is a story of toxic dumping with the soldiers as the lab rats. We saw this during the waves of radiation with nuclear, the extractivism with the Cold War, and using literal U.S. soldiers as lab rats with the nuclear testing. And today, the burn pits. And, of course, you mentioned Camp Lejeune. This was the worst water contamination event in American history. And for years, the military command was dumping intentionally toxic chemicals and lying about it. And then, of course, this is their modus operandi. They deny claims, they deny the existence of the toxic dumping until it's inevitable, until it's undeniable, and then they'll just basically dole out these claims with such an extreme delay that a judge today said it will take 100 years to basically look at every claim because they're trying to deny the class action lump sum lawsuit. So it's insane. I mean, this is a 50-plus-year-old story, and there's still people that are sick and dying because of this cover-up. And they've never been held accountable, and they've never properly remediated any of these areas, because most of the Superfund sites in the U.S. have either housed military installations or been used for military use. And they completely do not clean these sites up. They are left to rot and kill the people who live there.
I mean, this is a
These include
50-plus
American
year old
citizens and
story, and
service
there's
members.
still people that are sick and dying because
Well,
of
Camp
this
Lejeune,
cover-up.
the Marine Corps
And
camp,
they've never been held
it,
accountable.
of course,
They've never
not only
properly remediated any of these
sickened
areas,
and
Chris. Most of the
poisoned
Superfund sites in the
the
U.S.
Marines,
have either
but
housed
their
military
families.
installations or been
It
used
was,
for military
and as you
use.
said, it
And
was
they completely
incredibly
do not
prolonged
clean
because the
these
military
sites
denied
up.
it.
They are
Just
left
give
to
us kind of,
rot
you do
and
explore it in the
kill
film, but give
the
us the
people
kind
who
of
live there.
details
This includes
of just
American
how
citizens and
callous
service
that
members.
abuse was.
Yeah, this is
Well,
a
Camp
thing
Lejeune,
that
the Marine
people can
Corps
look at
camp,
and say, oh, they
it
didn't
of
know
course
any
not
better,
only
right? It was a long time
sickened
ago.
and
They certainly didn't know the
poisoned
toxicity.
the Marines,
They didn't have any
but
safe
their
alternatives. Of course they did.
families.
Similarly to
It was,
PFAS
and
today,
as you
they have
said,
safe
it was
alternatives. They don't need to use
incredibly prolonged
PFAS.
because
They
the military
choose
denied
to,
it.
Chris. They
Just
choose
give us
to.
kind of,
There's
you do
always safe
explore it in the
alternatives. There's
film, but give us
always
the kind of details
other things that
of
they could
just
do
how
other than open
callous that
burning,
abuse
open
was.
detonation on all these indigenous lands and desecrating these places. But when it comes to Camp Lejeune, this was a story that was happening for decades. I mean, they were dumping so much toxic waste because you look at just the maintenance of the military arsenal alone. The amount of toxic chemicals that are dumped into the ground in the open atmosphere just to clean these engine parts, to make these mission, to make these engines mission ready to fly around in pointless patrols. So the amount of toxic waste that's accumulating every day, I mean, it's really unquantifiable. So the military was doing this, dumping the toxic waste into water wells at this Marine Corps base for years and years and years. So when the tests were done and they knew the wells were poisonous, instead of stopping the dumping, they continued for years and covered it up while Marines were drinking the water, bathing in the water. I mean, it was just like Red Hill, where they were literally bathing, cooking, cleaning in toxic water. And who died as a result of that? Of course, countless people. I mean, we're talking about 1 million people that were impacted by this. But the people who really were affected by this were the babies. The babies who didn't have the ability to deflect the carcinogens in their body. They didn't have they didn't have the ability to do that. So we saw over 1,000 babies that were killed, stillborn, newborn infants. Chris, one of the women who goes back to these graves sees 3 born and died gravestones of children. Every 2 years, this woman would have a stillborn baby and probably thought it's her. She didn't know to blame the military brass. They didn't know. There was no accountability. There was no information given. Still to this day, you have people, activists, who are going out with cards saying, did you know about Camp Lejeune? Hey, you might be affected by this. I mean, it's absolutely insane to think of the lives lost, the destruction wrought on the families there, and actually no knowledge of what happened. Think about how many lives were ruined thinking that's
the military
you.
brass. They
That's
didn't
you.
know. There was
no
no
answers for
accountability.
these
There was no information given. Still to this day,
Well, let's talk about the nexus between our addiction to fossil fuels and imperialism, which I think is also a theme of the film.
It's absolutely insane to think of the lives
Yeah, I mean, you look back at the existence of the U.S. military as an institution, it's always been to extract,
what happened.
I mean, basically as the enforcement arm of extractivism.
That's you.
You look at the first extraterritorial bases, and they were always to protect coal,
Let's talk about the
the
nexus
infrastructure of
between
coal,
our addiction to fossil
and
fuels
then it became
and
oil, right?
imperialism,
When
which I
oil
think
was
is also a
discovered,
theme of the
that
film.
became cemented as the national security
you look
priority.
back
It's
at
always
the
been there.
existence
It's just
of the US
that we adopted the
military as
pretense
an
of national
institution.
security
It's
being
always
human
been
rights,
to extract.
democracy,
I mean,
freedom.
basically
It's
as the
always been
enforcement arm of
explicitly about
extractivism.
oil.
But
But the military has always been the enforcement arm for global capital.
And they were always
So today, I mean, the military basically is pointed as this arch nemesis in the
and
film.
then it became
But really,
oil, right?
it
When
is
oil was
just the
discovered,
consequence
that
of an
became cemented
imperialist
as the
system
national security
that
priority.
imposes
It's
the
always
dictates of
been there.
global
It's just that
capitalism
we
around the
adopted
world
the
at the
pretense
barrel of a
national
nuclear
security-
gun.
of national security being
And the
human
consequences are
rights,
dire
democracy,
if you don't bow to the
freedom. It's
dictates of the
always been
system, Chris.
explicitly about
So,
oil.
I always look at
But the military has always been the enforcement arm for global capital. So today, I mean, the military basically is pointed as this arch nemesis in the film. But really, it is just the consequence of an imperialist system that imposes the dictates of global capitalism around the world at the barrel of a nuclear armed gun. And the consequences are dire if you don't bow to the dictates of this system, Chris. So, I always look at...
See, like we said, man, Esau's gonna make you get down or lay down. You see? And this is the ancient Roman Empire all over again, man. All right, because when you go to Daniel 7, it gives it gives a description of the ancient Roman Empire in the seventh verse. It says Daniel 7:7. After this, I saw in the night visions, and this is Daniel receiving a vision. Okay, under the Babylonian Empire. So after the captivity of Judah. So this is around 586 BC, all right? Daniel was receiving visions from Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua about the 4 kingdoms that were going to rule on the planet Earth. You had the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian, the Greeks, and the Roman Empire. And remember, he received this under the Babylonian Empire, these visions. Rome, Persia, not Rome, but Rome and Greece didn't come to hundreds of years later down the line, man. You see, the Medo-Persia didn't happen till 30 years later, if I'm not mistaken. Showing you that the Heavenly Father's word is faithful and true, man. You see, it says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. Right? Was not the ancient Roman Empire strong exceedingly? Right? And it had great iron teeth, because that's what they use for their weapons. All right? Iron, which is hard to break. Okay? And it's not America strong exceedingly, right? It said it devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet thereof. Talking about what? These countries, man. All right? And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. Right? How was it diverse? Because it had the government that was set up. It had a Senate house. You see, where they voted to make one person the ruler. It said it also had 10 horns to represent the vassal states. Okay. It said it stamped the residue with the feet thereof, meaning it made the countries that it took over, they made them tributaries, and they put heavy taxes upon them. And that's the same thing that the United States of America does, man. All right. And this also was reborn again in the 8th verse. It says, and I considered the horns, the 10 horns, which today would be the EU. Okay. And behold, there came up among them another little horn. Because out of those 10 horns came what? The United States of America. Right? Before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. What does it mean, plucked up by the roots? America removed the power, okay, of those first 3 horns, which were Spain, the French, and the British, because those were the 3 horns that were battling over the territory of North America, okay, which later became the United States of America. And America, right, plucked those countries. You know, they went to war with those countries to establish the United
States. The perpetrators that have been rightly pointed at in terms of the global pollution that we are experiencing today, like big oil, big ag. But who enforces these mechanisms? Who props up this system? Who does it? It's the U.S. military. The oil companies have a military, and that's the U.S. military. Now, you mentioned the fact that if you look at just the institutional level of pollution in terms of the consumption of oil, that amounts to 150 countries, right? But it doesn't even scratch the surface of the emissions, because we're talking about U.S.-led military emissions, which includes NATO. It includes the great power competition when the U.S. continues.
Who does it? It's the U.S. military. The oil companies have a military, and that's the U.S. military. Now, you mentioned the fact that if you look at just the institutional level of pollution in terms of the consumption of oil, that amounts to 150 countries, right? But it doesn't even scratch the surface of the emissions, because we're talking about U.S.-led military emissions, which includes NATO. It includes the great power competition when the U.S. continues.
NATO is part of the beast. The beast represents, in some certain contexts, America, NATO, and the EU. Okay, but when you read Revelation, the 17th chapter, where it says the beast shall hate the whore, the beast is talking about NATO. The whore is the United States of America, because it controls NATO. You see, you know, Trump always blow. You know, we say blow down, which means he
build up its armaments and withdraws from all these treaties. Well, of course, Russia and China will respond with their own military buildup. It all goes back to the impetus, to the imperial core, and the belligerence and arrogance by the U.S. And then you see this reaction, this wave around the world reacting to the U.S. belligerence. But you talk about the necessity of maintaining this arsenal and kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's, I think, really the key here, is the actual infrastructure of the fossil fuel domination and that cyclical need to get the natural resources, to pillage and plunder, to extract the last vestiges of natural gas and oil, to justify feeding the arsenal. To feed the oil dragon, you need to continue to grow and expand.
And that's, I think, really
just to feed it. I mean, so it really is a self-fulfilling prophecy in the worst way possible. It's collective suicide because the military itself is the main driver of the system. It is driving this unsustainable world that's dominated by fossil fuels. And then it uses the expanse to justify its own growth and expansion. And then you have people like Nancy Pelosi and these liberal politicians saying the military is the solution for the problem
so it really is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So we're in the worst way possible, where there's no imagination
because the military
outside of the system itself that has caused the very problem that we're facing,
this
and they want it to be the
that's
solution
dominated by fossil fuel. And then it uses
well,
the expanse to justify
down, as you have increasing numbers of climate refugees
and then you have people like Nancy
from the
Pelosi and
global
these liberal
south,
politicians
as you
saying
have
the military is the
naval
solution
bases, and
for the
the military is planning for this.
So we're in the worst way possible, where there's no imagination or
because of
ingenuity
sea level
outside of the system
rises,
itself that has
the
caused
very
the very problem that we're facing, and they want it to be the solution
the excuse not only for their existence, as but the climate breaks down,
their
expansion, where Trump is now talking about a military budget of $1.5 trillion.
Naval
bases,
I mean, it is
this kind of very bizarre feedback loop.
Essentially buried underwater. And people talk about the notion of the imperial boomerang. Of course, for marginalized brown and black people, they've always felt the brunt of our colonial, the consequences of
but their expansion, where Trump is now talking about a military budget of $1.5 trillion. I mean, it is this kind of very bizarre feedback loop.
Yeah, it is. And, people talk about the notion of the imperial boomerang. Of course, for marginalized brown and black people, they've always felt the brunt of our colonial
very bizarre feedback loop.
Black and brown
it is. And, people talk about the notion of the imperial boomerang. Of course, for marginalized brown and black people, they've always felt the brunt of our colonial, the consequences of colonialism and imperialism. But I think for people who look like me in this country, they're seeing that this is inseparable. This boomerang effect of the consequences of having a global military empire that acts as a for-profit corporation. That when you have surplus
for marginalized brown and black people, they've always felt the brunt of our colonial, the consequences of colonialism and imperialism. But I think for people who look like me in this country, they're seeing that this is inseparable. This boomerang effect of the consequences of having a global military empire that acts as a for-profit corporation. That when you have surplus...
See, so they're saying that, they're not exempt, from what you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Seminole Native American Indians have been through. You see, Esau it just showed you that Esau doesn't care about his own people, man. He doesn't care about anybody. You see? Because this is what he was created to do. He was created to be the wicked for the day of evil. You see? He was created to take peace from the earth, man. But the scriptures talk about how it shall go into perdition, right? That's almost skipped my mind, all right? But this is the book of Revelation, chapter 17. And I'm going to start at 7. And the angel said unto me, right, I just want to make this point. Why doesn't Vocab Malone go through these prophecies, man? Right? Why aren't you Christian pastors, you Edomite evangelists, why aren't y'all going into these prophecies, man? Right? Because the Lord ain't dealing with you, man. You see? They want to steady talk about salvation, the true name, what the true name of the Lord, the virgin birth, the same old topics, man. You see, but they never go through the prophecies, man. You see, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai is the spirit of prophecy, man. Okay. And only a select few, 144,000, are going to be able to prophesy the 100% truth, man. And Lord willing, we are of that number, man. This is Revelation 17:7. And the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, right? The United States of America, and of the beast that carrieth her, NATO, and the EU, right? Which hath the 7 heads, which is NATO, and the 10 horns, which is the EU. The beast that thou sawest was, right, and is not. Meaning what? John saw the United States of America in the vision, but it wasn't fully, it wasn't a living, if you might say, entity yet. You see, he foresaw it. Okay, not hundreds, but 1,000 years in advance, because John received these visions around 90 AD and wrote them down in 96, right? And America didn't come into establishment until what? 1776. You see. So it says, the beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, right, and go into perdition. You see. And that's talking about who? That's talking about the United States of America. And why did it ascend out of the bottomless pit? Because America is a descendant of those European nations, because Europe is the bottomless pit. Remember, America is nothing but a kin to those European nations. I just read it to you in Daniel the 7th chapter. It says, and goeth into perdition, which means destruction. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they beheld the beast that was, right? Meaning what? Was in the vision, and is not what? A living entity yet, right? It didn't exist, right? And yet is, meaning what? It is going to come. You see, it is going to come. All right. So it says, and here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, which mean governments, which the 7 represents the Greeks, the Romans, Germania Major, Germania Minor, the Spanish, the French, and the British. Those are the 7. That's Esau's power structure, okay, on which the woman sitteth, right? It sits upon those 7 mountains, which represent what? NATO, okay? And there are 7 kings. I just mentioned them. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come, right? Which 5 are fallen? Greek, Germania Major, Germania Minor, the Spanish, and the French, right? Which you can look up their ancient names. Those are the 5 that are fallen. And the one that is, meaning what? Still in power. It's talking about Rome. And the other is not yet come. It's talking about who? Britain. All right? And when Britain cometh, he must continue a short space. Why? Because he was only going to rule. Britain was only going to rule for a short time. Why? Because America is going to take place of Britain, man. It's going to receive the power. Because remember, America is ancient Rome all over again. That's why it says, in the beast that was, talking about the United States of America, meaning what was in John's vision. And it's not, meaning he is not here on the planet Earth, right? It's not created yet. Even he is the 8th, right? He's the 8th head, all right? He's the 8th head, the 8th king, the 8th mountain, right? And is of the 7, right? Meaning what?
weaponry that you need to continue to justify the next generation of these pointless vehicles. It either is handed off to entities like ISIS or the Taliban or to local police forces here in the U.S., which in turn brutalizes and subjugates its respective populations, like in Minneapolis. So it's a feedback loop in the worst way, in every possible way, that you need to continue to grow on a finite planet. You need to continue to justify the growth and the expanse. And so one fascinating thing about Trump that I've heard you articulate many times is the fact that he's completely dropped the mask. I mean, all of this is just very explicit. It's about the oil. Iran's the third largest oil producer in the world. Venezuela's the first. I mean, this is insane. It's an overlap of just the law of the jungle, complete lawlessness, kind of harkening back to the days of Christopher Columbus, where it's just openly colonial, like Operation Total Extermination of Latin America. Any country that doesn't bow to this global system will be punished, will be destroyed unapologetically from the ruling class.
I mean, this is insane.
You know, when we did this film,
it's an overlap of
what's amazing about it was kind
of complete lawlessness, kind of harkening back to the days of Christopher Columbus, where it's just openly colonial, like Operation Total Extermination of Latin America. Any country that doesn't bow to this global system will be punished, will be destroyed unapologetically from the ruling class. So, you know, when we did this film, what's amazing about it, it was kind of...
You know, there you have it, man. You know, thy own tongue shall fall upon themselves. You know, the United States of America is in the spirit that the Lord created them to be in, man. He created Esau to do one thing, to bring death upon the planet Earth, man. And he's doing that. You know, it's crazy they compared it to Christopher Columbus, man, whose real name was Cristobal Colon. You see, he didn't put down his sword for 1 hour when he so-called discovered, the Western Hemisphere, man. And this is the Esau's in that same spirit 500, 600 years later, man. All right, so I'm going to close out. Lord willing.